Hello, this is JB. Live in Green Bay, Wisconsin, but I'm originally from Charlotte, North Carolina. Today I'm going to talk about my dad's career in the tile industry. So my dad's father, Bill Brown, he started a tile company around 1952. And so my dad grew up around tile because my grandfather worked out at the basement at first, and he my dad worked with my grandfather in the summers when he was in middle school and high school. And when my dad was 16, he was a junior in high school. And they had this program at the school he went to, Garinger, where uh, students could study in regular classes in the first part of the day, and the second part of the day they could get school credit for going to work at a job. So he worked full time with my uncle, or my grandfather and my uncle. My uncle was already working full time, and so he would leave school and go to work and work a full day. So he wouldn't stop working until late in the night. But my dad started full time around 1976, and he's still doing business today. So he almost has 50 years in the business. Um, One of my first memories in life comes from when I was 2 or 3 years old. My mother took me to my dad's job site where he was finishing a job, and she handed me off to him. And what she did was put me in the front seat of his truck on the passenger side, and I played in the floorboard while my dad was loading his tools and getting ready to leave. And I guess we went back home, but I don't remember that part. But all throughout my childhood, um, I rode in my dad's truck. He had a bunch of different trucks over the years, but I rode in the truck, and he had grout and Denset. Denset used to apply the tile to the surface, and grout uh, is in the joints between the tiles. But he would have the seat, or not the seat, but the floorboard filled with bags or partial bags of those materials. And the reason was so they wouldn't get wet if they were in the back of the truck and it rained. So I always had my feet up like this because my feet were on top of the bags and my knees were up in the air. But either way, I liked riding with my dad because a lot of times we were going to different parts of the city of Charlotte, North Carolina, the surrounding suburbs, to work in custom homes. And he would stop at McDonald's or Burger King, Bojangles, Hardee's, someplace like that, and we would get something to eat. And a lot of times at home, when I was at home with my mom, we didn't get go out to eat as much because as they used to say in the 80s and 90s, we have McDonald's at home, so we're not going to go to the McDonald's restaurant. But so I was always out with him, and as I started to get older, um, I would help him. Sometimes it was just carrying tools. Sometimes it was grouting or caulking. Sometimes it was carrying tile or brick pavers or whatever he was using. But I was helping him as much as I could. And I learned more and more as I got older. And sometimes he would come home from work, and I would be at home with my mother, and he would have materials on the back of his truck, like maybe some grout or thin set, and some tiles and a piece of wood. And I would take the wood, mix up some thin set, and then use one of his trowels to uh, put the tile onto the thin set and the piece of wood. Then I would have a very tiny, very small floor. And I liked doing that just because I was being like my dad, even though I was in the back of a truck instead of a large home. That I was doing the same thing that he was doing. And when I was younger, I wanted to go into the tile business like my dad, like my uncle and my grandfather, because that's what they did, and they were very tough, all of them. But you have to be tough to be in that industry because it's physically demanding. You're carrying heavy buckets of thin set, sometimes what we call mud, so a mixture of sand, cement, water, um, or thick mud, sand, water, and cement and other material. But so we'd be carrying those, and it wasn't easy. And mortar was the other material I was trying to think of. But but it's not easy work, and you're carrying tile. And they used to have what they call wonder board, which is basically um, like a concrete board that you would use to put on walls so you could attach, so you could lay tile to it. But it's heavy because it's made out of rock, and we would carry 2 sheets of that at a time upstairs or around the house to the back to a door. Sometimes you would have to cross a like a front porch that didn't have concrete on it yet. You'd have to cross that on a board, balanced so you didn't fall off, and just hard. And but when I was a kid, my dad worked 7 days a week, sometimes from 6 in the morning until 10, 11, 12 at night. So he was working all day, every day. And sometimes we didn't get to see him as much as we wanted, but sometimes saw him a lot because I was with him. And when I was small in the 80s and early 90s, he worked a lot in South Charlotte, like Carmel Road and Southeast Charlotte, but and also Central Charlotte, so like Myers Park, Eastover, Dilworth, uh, different places. And once in a while, we would go out to Lake Norman work, or Lake Wiley, which is to the south, Lake Norman's to the north. Occasionally, we would go other places, but we were always working somewhere he was. And the thing I realized very early about my dad is that he still has great attention to detail. So he would go to a job, and if he was doing repair work, which he did a lot, he would look at the problem and he would really try to understand the problem, what was causing it, and then he would get all the way down to the root, fix that, and so that way the problem wouldn't come back and you'd have the same problem again. So he would really analyze the situation and try to find the best way to fix it. And I always liked that about my dad, but it's also when you deal with him, it's kind of hard because he's very detailed, very focused, and you can't change his mind. Once he knows something, that's just the way it's going to be. And so I had like a kind of a love hate relationship with that because I think differently about different things, not just tile. But he's very rigid in his thinking, and but a lot of times, especially with tile work, he was right, and I saw that because when he fixed something or installed something, it was there for the duration. It was going to be there for a long time. But I have so many good memories of working with him teaching me how to caulk and how to grout, how to make it look nice when you're done, and how to protect the floor, and how to clean. Um, it's pretty simple, but still, there's a right way and a wrong way to do it. He, when he laid tile, one of the first things that you do is you lay out the floor, so you decide um, where the tile is going to go, and so you have to measure and you pop lines. So you take a chalk box that has string inside it. You pull the string out, and the string has, like I said, chalk, but it's colored chalk. And so then you put it down on the floor, and you pop a line. And so the tile has to line up with the chalk line so that you know um, that it's going in the right place and that it's going to be straight, because you don't want the tile going all different kind of ways or crooked. And so we did that, but he would hold the side of the chalk box with the box, and I would hold the other end. So I would walk to a different side of the floor, and then he would tell me to pull it up and let it drop to pop it. And then we would work based off of where the lines were. So I remember being with him at a lot of different jobs where he was installing, and there wasn't a whole lot of work for me to do when he was doing that, because um, one person knows what they're going to do and how they're going to do it. And so he would tell me, bring me this, bring me that, and I would do it, but I wasn't installing tile. Every once in a while he would say, hey Jared, come here, I want you to give it a try. And so I would place one or two pieces in place, and then I would let him go back to it, because he was obviously older, more experienced, and faster. But we worked, I remember working like in, I don't even know what the name of that city is, north of Mooresville, maybe between Statesville, at this place that was near a ranch that had all sorts of ostriches and different animals. I remember working in Wesley Chapel, Weddington area, in Union County for my mom's boss. So many different places in Myers Park and Eastover and Dilworth. But a lot of times, since he was good at repair work and he kind of specialized in that, we worked in older homes. Sometimes these were homes that were like 100 years old, and sometimes these were homes that were 10 or 20 years old, but their tile work just needed needed a facelift. So he would go do that. And people came to him. So as far as I know, other than business cards, he's never spent a dime on advertising. So no newspapers, no signs, no flyers, nothing. Everything's word of mouth. And so one builder might ask him to do something, and then he would go and do it, and it would be really good. And then they'd say, "Wow, Joe," his name's Joe. "Wow, Joe, that's really good work. I know a guy who needs something else done," and then that guy would refer my dad to another guy, and then at a certain point, he had so many different contacts, and they would just come to him, so he doesn't have to like chase them down and beg them for work. They come to him when they need it. And the main reason for that is his reputation, because he took that very seriously. Still takes it very seriously. When I was a kid, I remember I had to take some paper home to get it signed, and it asked for my parents' occupations and how much education they had and a bunch of different things. But occupation, and he wrote professional tile setter. So instead of just saying tile setter, construction worker, he said professional, and that's the way that's the way he approached his work. So he wasn't just going there, doing it, getting paid, and leaving. He had a professional work ethic that that was like his identity. So if he did a job, it had to look good, because that would reflect on him, and he wanted it to be right. And when I would be with him, he would teach me how to do something right. Like I said before, so we don't have to come back and do it again. But when I was in middle school, I started to go with him more often. And one of my best memories, well, I'll back up. And one time in elementary school, it was probably in 5th grade, he he was working for my uncle, but there was a job in Lake Norman, the Peninsula neighborhood, exit 28 off I-77. And we went to the back of this neighborhood, and the house had this large back porch, and the lake was out there. You could see the lake in the backyard, the lakefront, and we were putting down cobblestones on a back porch that was elevated. And so there was like a big stack of these cobblestones, which were about like that. And he set everything up the way it needed to be, and there was a pattern. So it was I think two long cobblestones and then one half. So it would be 2 1 2 1 2 1, and then the next row it would flip to 1 2 1 2 1 2, and so it was staggered, and you had to follow the pattern or it wouldn't look right. And so I saw my dad following the pattern. I was the one bringing the blocks. I saw him following the pattern all day long. For lunch, we went to Burger King. We had BK Big Fish and sat in the parking lot and ate. And then we went back to the job in the afternoon. It was hot. And I remember how, like, every time I would bring the blocks, he would say, "Hey, be careful. There's the brown recluse, which is this kind of spider. And if it bites you, it can cause a lot of damage to your skin, to your body, and you could get really sick." But he would say, "Watch out for the brown recluse." Sometimes he would say, "Wear gloves." But he was protecting me and trying to show me how to work without injuring myself. But we were working, and someone came. I can't remember if it was the builder or contractor or if it was the homeowner, but someone came, and when someone comes to the job site, you get up and talk to them, especially if they're somebody where the money comes from. And so my dad got up, he went over and talked to them, and while he was doing that, I got down where my dad was, and I started running the pattern, the 2 1 2 1 2 1 or 1 2 1 2 1 2, and I just did it on my own because I saw that the production stopped, and the longer the production stops, the later we were going to be there that night, and the less money you make too, because you spend more time to get a job done. You make the same amount of money, but you do it in a longer period of time. But so I just started doing it, and the guy that my dad was talking to, whoever that was, he said, "Watch him go," like talking about how quick I was working, how well I was working, and that I was doing the pattern the way it was supposed to be. And my dad said, "Yeah, that's my son." So he was proud of me because that person had complimented me, and it made my dad proud. So I always remember that because I'm a grown man now. I'm almost 40 years old, but I still want to make my dad proud because, ever since I was little, I looked up to him, you know, literally and metaphorically, because he's my dad. He knew things before I knew them, and so I tried to watch him and learn from him, and I still do in some ways. And so that made me proud. It's in the story I was gonna tell after that was one time me and my dad were working on this porch, Mint Hill, North Carolina, for a guy that my grandfather actually knew. I think this guy sold, aircraft parts, and that's how my grandfather knew him because he was a pilot. But this man was older. His last name was Barber. But we had this big job where we tore out a porch all the way down to the ground, and it was, I don't know, 4 or 5 feet tall. So we had to, the first thing we had to do was to use a jackhammer to break through the brick so that we could dig into everything that was below there, and then we would, because it wasn't settled, or it's settled, which messed up the brick on the top layer. So we dug all the way down after we broke up the brick, took everything out, and then went back and redid it to make it right so that it wouldn't move around. But my dad, when we went that day to start breaking through the brick, he was operating the jackhammer for most of the day because a jackhammer, it's heavy. It's like solid metal on the top, and there's a metal piece that and a sharp end, and it hits the brick and breaks the brick. And it does with this percussion, so it shakes like this. And you kind of have to be bigger and stronger to do it, and you have to know how to balance the jackhammer so that it doesn't get out of control or fall back on you. And so he did it for most of the day because he was bigger and stronger, sturdy. And I said, "Hey, Dad, I want to do it." I think it was me that volunteered first. Um, he may have said, "Hey, Jared, give this a try," but I don't think so. I think I volunteered. And he said, "Okay, son, be careful. This thing is heavy, and it's not balanced. So you got to make sure and hold it the right way, or you're going to get hurt." I said, "Okay." And so I got ready. I was a little bit nervous because this thing was strong, and I was in sixth grade, so I was starting to grow and get stronger, and I could handle it. But I wasn't sure because I'd never done it before. And so my dad stood behind me and had his hands on my shoulders. And just having his hands on my shoulders, even though it wasn't doing the work, having it there, knowing that something goes wrong, he's right there. That was good. And that's like a metaphor for anything in life. Like parents, whether it's the dad or the mom, uh, if they just stand behind their children and show them they're there, you'd be surprised what the children can do because all they need is some support. If they get support, it gives them confidence, and then they feel more able to do things. And that's what happened in that case because I was able to start um, busting up the brick. And then when my dad saw that, that helped because then he could take a break because it's hard on your joints, your hands and your joints, my shoulders too. And so then we could take turns, and we spent a lot of time on that job because there was so much work. And my dad was really concerned about getting it done the right way. He didn't want to, because it was such a thorough job, so much had to be done. He didn't want to make a mistake, so he did it the right way. And he did things extra that he didn't have to do, like he used rebar, like metal bar, to give it, fortify it, and to make sure that it wasn't going to move after he put the laid concrete and then we laid brick on top. But after we completed the job, my dad got paid. We left. We started doing other jobs. And one day we were riding past the job, and my dad pulled into the driveway, even though we were done. He pulled into the driveway. He pulled up to the job, the place where we had worked, and he got out of the truck, and he started pouring water on the brick pavers. And I said, "Dad, what are you doing?" He said, "I'm doing a test." I said, "Dad, uh, what are you testing for?" He said, "I need to make sure all the bricks are as flat as they're supposed to be." I said, "Dad, we did a good job. We don't need to do anything else, and you don't have to do this test. It's not required." He said, "Yeah." He said, "I know it's not required, but I want to do it. We need to do it because quality was so important to him." And he did find a few places where just there was a very slight problem. No one would ever notice. You couldn't see it with your eye, but you could see it with this test that he did. So he went to the bricks. They dry really quick because they suck up the water, and it was hot. But he went to the bricks and he started drawing X's on the ones that needed to come out. And then he removed them. He fixed the problem to make them more flat, and then put them back in place. And he did this even though he didn't have to. Um, and he didn't charge any extra money. And I, like I said, I told him, Dad, nobody's ever going to know. And he said, Well, I'll know. My work has to meet my standard. And so, even though it wasn't going to affect him and he wasn't going to make extra money for it, he wanted to do it the right way. And he's still like that. It's his craftsmanship and the quality of his product is important because his name is on it. The people who paid for it know who he is, and he wants to have a good reputation with them so they can give him more work. But there were just too many times to name where me and my dad worked together. He did a lot of slate outside, this greenish, grayish slate. Um, we did a lot of repairs on that because it was just very hard to make it stick. Even after you would make it stick pretty soon, within a couple of years, even though we did it the right way, it would just come loose just because of the way the material was and the fact that it was outside and it would get wet. And sometimes, like, people would drive their truck on top of it and all kinds of stuff, or a car, or just have a lot of people, a lot of weight on it. And sometimes in the older job sites, the ground was settling and stuff, and so it would move around a little bit. But we did a lot of that, and it was hard work because the slate is heavy, and sometimes you had to pick it up and put it back down several times to make sure you can get it right. Um, but sometimes we worked late into the night, so I would have to hold the light so that he could see it, and we'd be driving home at 11:30 on a school night, not because he was being irresponsible and keeping his kid up all night, because he was working and he was trying to make money because we needed it. His regular job, he was working with his brother because his brother took over the company, and his brother wanted money for himself because his brother, the only word is greedy. He was greedy and he wanted to be wealthy, and he was. He had a great big house. He had Jaguar, Mercedes Benz, Cadillac, different fancy cars, and he sent his kids to private school. And the private school cost almost as much as my dad's yearly salary. So my uncle enriched himself by impoverishing my dad and my family. And it caused a lot of problems in my life that still exist because those things, one thing leads to another. But my dad, he could have very easily been mad about that because my dad and my uncle agreed to be partners in the beginning. And then my uncle said, "Oh no, I want to work alone," and he didn't actually work alone. What he meant was, I want all the money for myself. And he didn't want to share decision making. He didn't want to share profits. He wanted to be in control, and he wanted to have the business for himself. And he did for many years. He ended up dying 2014. He had pancreatic cancer, and he did not die a happy death. But you know, by that point, my dad was long gone from my brother's or my uncle's company, and his brother, and because he left in 2004. So my very first week working for my uncle was my dad's very last week, and so Monday was my first day, and Friday was his last day. And I remember being on the dock, and my dad's not a sentimental guy, and I was hoping he would say, "Hey son, I'm proud of you. You're gonna do good," and all that, but he didn't. He didn't say anything. He didn't say good luck. He didn't say call me if you need me. Um, and I hope that it wasn't aimed towards me. It was just because he was done with the company and with the way he had been treated for so many years. My uncle was a very strong personality, and he did not treat my dad well. A lot of times I saw my uncle yell at my dad, curse at my dad, threaten my dad, fire my dad, and then hire him back 10 minutes later, all kinds of stuff. And my dad endured it. He could have, a long time ago, like in the 90s, sued my uncle because he broke his agreement, or he could have yelled and cursed at my uncle and tried to fight him, or he could have just quit or complained all the time. And he didn't do none of that. He just worked and worked and worked and worked some more. So I admire my dad's um, perseverance, considering all those situations. But so he left in 2004, and last year was my dad's 20th year of full-time self-employment. He was he did odd he did side jobs way before that, starting from the 80s and 70s. But 20 years of full-time employment, and he has a small business where he installs some tile, but he focuses on repairs and cleaning and recalking, regrouting, stuff like that. He makes surfaces look new again. He renews surfaces, and people in older homes, they appreciate it because even though their house is old, they want it to look good, and so they call him and they pay him well. He's not rich, but they pay him what he deserves, and they really appreciate him because not many people want to take the time to do that kind of work anymore. But he does it, and he does it well, and I'm proud of him. There's a lot of other stuff that I will tell you about, but everything I've said here explains him really well and explains who he is and what he's done, and that's about all I have for today. He's a person that I admire and I respect because I've done his work, and I know it's difficult and it's hard, and I don't know if at his age I could do that kind of work. Hope I don't have to, but he's in his 60s now, and he's probably going to work for another 5 or 10 years. Even though he says he's retired, but he's still working. I don't understand what that means, but I'm just proud of him because next year is going to be 50 years for him, and so he's been around a long time. He's an old cowboy, and you know, I a lot of times people they look down on people that do manual labor, construction, that kind of thing, because it's not like intellectual. You're not like studying history or political science or something like that, economics. So you're not reading books all day and giving speeches. So these kind of people, and the fact that they don't make much money, they get looked down on. But there's nobody. I don't care. I don't care what their job is. If they're a lawyer or a scientist or an engineer or a banker, there's nobody that can look down on my dad because the way my dad has lived, and especially the way he has worked, he's done it the right way, and it's very respectful. That's all I have to say. Thanks for listening. Bye.